But there's some photos that, again, sometimes they make a comment, I go back, I spoke, I try to understand what they said. And
Something, it's just, yeah, been kind of weird the past few weeks. Are you going to Pittsburgh tomorrow? No? Is anybody?
I don't think anybody, I'm not sure.
Oh, really? What happened?
Well,
Yeah.
I think nobody wanted to drive. I really think that's what it came down to.
Oh, really?
So,
What's her face was gonna try?
Brad was.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, part of it is he's not getting that thing.
Yes, they. Yes,
You go that distance.
Yeah, but you guys should have learned some stuff from other outings that you can crack.
Well, I'm interested in that age area. I really want to see it.
I thought that would have been interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just had something come up that I can't go tomorrow.
I get it. It's just like,
Unfortunate, and maybe I wasn't gonna say anything because I didn't wanna make a commitment without, but maybe I do something.
Yeah.
Cause I don't wanna go, I wanted to go when it gets dark early, so when I get home, like at one,
that makes sense.
1 or 2 in the morning.
Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't know why we get so attached, emotionally attached to a book.
Well, there was a couple of people might have paid attention. Football one.
Buy a frame, make the picture, and actually give it to them. But I didn't just over there. They could give my time. That's what I'm looking for. Just, you know, it's just a close shot of a day's determination. Ask, instead of giving me the side. It's just one of those.
We're gonna turn this monitor.
That's just so I could.
Oh, that's your monitor, okay.
That's my teleprompter.
Yeah.
And when I'm done, I flip it around.
Got it.
We couldn't afford the usual presidential teleprompter.
Sometimes you let your instincts go. The inner self, you're still thinking about it, which means that you're really good at it. But they have. Well, there's a big difference between. But then you give it to them, and they make the assumption they're
Well, you're not blowing in these terms. I'm still blowing in these terms of program. I missed what I was at. They have, occasional meetings, it's not like their schedule. I got the whole, yeah, that's just it. It's occasionally, it's close to home. There's occasionally interesting stuff there. Yeah, I live in Stratford. Yeah, that's why. Down the line, that's right, exactly, it's right there. I'll go listen to anything. Now, I don't know. Interesting on the 10 times. It's more, because we went into politics because the politics of the 10 times. Because the people here has been the one who does it. Someone offered it before, he got relegated to, so there's like a Cleveland 10 type that does them, and he got relegated to another spot. So, just this. So when we had a woman, which she likes that for other reasons, she had a background, but just listening to it, like, so there was a 10 photograph against me. Politics.
I never knew there was politics.
Category thing.
One week to work with organization. But it's nice to.
Download like 10 of them, toss it.
I'm sure you
Put it in the flash
Okay. Well, this is actually.
Oh, okay.
Some of the
Chuck's got mine.
Chuck's got one. I'll take. One has this.
yeah, 2 times. I started mine.
I like it. I mean, I always pray to have too much guidance. I was spooked. What would they say? Yeah, one week is too much. Where's the contract? I mean, my head's spinning based on the judge.
You have
The dogs don't have.
One behind you, okay, now.
You know, I usually say
batteries good to go.
with septic catchers.
I don't need batteries.
Pardon?
You don't need batteries. You put fresh batteries in, you just have.
I'll sit over here.
So I'm.
Welcome to the loser side.
They're missing me.
Well, I told you, the room test tells me that so many people, how much it
Let's first one start.
Matt, I turn it on.
Oh, yeah.
Turn it. Because it's operated.
Right.
Offered to get in the car.
Right, thank you. I'll be up front.
Good evening. We're about to get underway with our competition night, but first, we'll go over a few announcements. Okay, upcoming Friday night meetings. Next November 11th is our bee competition. We've had one bee competition that's for our beginners already. It was a print competition. This is our first projection competition. The deadline has passed on that, and that is coming up next Friday. Then November 18th is going to be a creative and pictorial competition, which will be print again. And since it is a print and we have time to fill before, I'll be speaking on 20, 30 minutes on introduction to monitor calibration. If you want to be confused, I will do that. So that'll be before our creative competition, November 18th. November 25th, since the clubhouse is closed for Thanksgiving, we're going to have an encore presentation that I will put up online. One of our most popular speakers, our own club member, John Theobald, a phenomenal street photographer, travels the world, and John did a presentation, not a lot of pretty pictures, which some unbelievable street photography pictures there. And so that will be up online, but the clubhouse will be closed for that Thanksgiving. December 2nd, we're having back again Joe Edelman. And for those of you who have never heard Joe, it is an experience. He is not only extremely knowledgeable, but he is one heck of a presenter, a real character. And it is a pleasure to listen to him. We had him just the other week, and he'll be back on December 2nd doing a Zoom presentation on practical composition. Our next SIG meeting, we had our last SIG meeting last night. It was very successful. We had a great turnout. Dave Bush is just a font of knowledge. We finally let him go home about 10:30. Everyone was asking questions. And what we all decided is our next SIG meeting, December 1st, which is Thursday night, is going to be everything you know about exposure is wrong. He's going to go over about exposing to the right and exposure meters and whatnot. And it's fascinating. He talked a little bit about what he's going to be going into, and that's the next SIG meeting, December 1st. Save the date, January 21st is our annual cabin fever party, kind of like a potluck affair, robbers auction, food prizes, lots of fun. The annual tradition before COVID hit. So the last few years we have not had it. We're starting up again after the holidays, January 21st, so put that on your calendar. It's right here at the clubhouse. Critique nights are back. We're putting together our first critique night after a long time. December 30th will be our first one. There's going to be more information on our website. You could bring in any images at all. We'll have a group here being able to go over these, critique, give you feedback. There'll be more information following on that. Again, anyone who's been out to Stone Garden Farms, the last plea, if you have any pictures there to help Jim and Laura Fry out, they're trying to market the farm. On our homepage, there's an upload link. You don't have to downsize your pictures or everything, just upload them. And if they use any of them, they'll give you credit. So we're just doing that for Jim and Laura because they're always so generous to our club in allowing us to go out there. We had our camera equipment sale for Rob Eric's equipment, and we did very well. We sold almost everything. It does us no good to hold on to the stuff. So basically I just slashed the prices even more. I put a list similar to this up on the homepage of our website so you could look at it. But I think one of them, what did we get? 80 to 400 is gone now. We still have the 200 to 500. We have tripods for $20. You can't beat that. Reflectors and diffusers for $20 too for students or people starting out. I'll be posting more things on there as well. We just want to move the stuff. All this money goes back to Rob Eric's family. And as always, this and all of our public meetings and competitions are on our YouTube channel, streaming live, and they are archived there. You can go back anytime and listen to these as well. Our Zoom meetings are private, only for use for our club. And we have no mechanism to show those, but those will be all available on our new website, which we hope to have up January 1st, and there'll be a members-only site, and you could review all at your convenience any of our Zoom meetings over the last 2 years that we've had them. So that concludes our announcements, and we'll go on now and get set for our black and white competition and pictorial. And first, just a little bit about the judges tonight. First judge, Keith Blandford. Keith Blandford became interested and then immersed in photography 70 years ago.
Oh, geez.
Wow. He was a yearbook photographer, then worked at a camera store after high school and experimented in photography, going as far as making his own high-speed black and white and color developers. During his working and family-raising years, he did not shoot as much, but did stay involved working in other media. Retiring about 20 years ago, he was again bitten by the photo bug and started shooting, competing, teaching, judging, and exhibiting his work. Some behind-the-scenes shooting on student movie projects led to an interest in his favorite genre, street photography. And Blandford's work can be viewed at www.keithblandford.com. Stuart Pearl, our second judge. Stuart Pearl is a documentary photographer and has been a strong advocate for the arts in Cleveland all his life. He is board president of the Artists Archive of the Western Reserve, as well as one of their archived artists, and has been quite active in the community as a judge for several photography organizations. He regularly lectures on photography, and he is a volunteer naturalist in the Regent's Park system, as well as the Holden Arboretum. Stewart's work has been exhibited in several Ohio museums, the Metro Parks, multiple publications for the Cleveland Museum of Art, and the media for WVIZ Idea Stream. He also won Best in Show for the 2008 Butler Institute of American Annual Art Competition. Current projects include photography for a Metro Parks guidebook on fish of Northeast Ohio, documentation of Holden's stickwork sculpture, and the ongoing photo survey for the Acacia Reservation Restoration Project. Stewart currently lives in Lyndhurst with his wife Jean, who has been generally supportive of his photography career over the more than 4 decades. She is extremely, all in caps, patient. And our last judge is Pete Copeland. And he's returning as a judge to CPF after a few years absent. He is a wedding and events photographer in the area and retired from working at the Cleveland Plain Dealer in 2006 after 36 years of service. So at this point, let me turn down that light, turn back our screen. And get set up here, and we'll get underway. Okay, we're going to start with our black and white. First picture.
Case says, I was immediately drawn into the photo and story without any sort of distraction or ambiguity. The framing works well and is more interesting than the other shapes would be. I think this is a minor point. I think I would make it a pure silhouette and not show the reflection on the eyeglasses. The white line is distracting me.
This is called 50th plus 2 Wedding Anniversary Party by Frank Marino. 17 points.
Pete says, very well composed, fresh view of something all of us have seen before. Good quality print. Will stand the passing of time.
A Cleveland Icon by Neil Limbaugh. 21 points.
Stewart says, the image really draws the viewer in because it is one of the most interesting faces I've seen. The lighting is flat and even with no substantial modeling, but that in no way detracts from the composition and detail, which is very well presented. That tilt of the head really connects with the viewer. The shallow depth of field and solid exposure also help to make this a successful, candid portrait.
Air Show Spectator by Richard Ader. 19 points.
Case says, I saw multiple stories, all good. Love and tenderness, a helping hand, and the shapes and their interaction are very powerful. Nothing distracts. Well done.
Almost Touching by Bill Keaton. 21 points.
Pete says, I know how this was done, and I wish I had been there first. I have seen this image style before, and I think this one is one of the better compositions.
Back of the Rock by Joe DiStefano. 19 points.
Stewart says, due to the colorfully appealing nature of flowers, they are often not the greatest candidates for black and white. However, this shot breaks that loose rule due to its unique composition and cropping. Shot from behind but illuminated from the front presents a visually unpredictable image. This causes the viewer to linger in his or her appreciation. It is also chopped left and right, which gives you a more intense claustrophobic focus. That can be bad, but it works well here. Range of focus and sharpness is very pleasing, and there's a solid tonal range from bright white to gray all the way to black, which is really enjoyable. This was well thought out.
This is called Backside Backlighting by Dave Saborik. 24 points, second place.
Case states, It certainly is an interesting old building with lots of history. You wonder what all went on over all those years. My eye wandered around wanting a principal subject. Maybe if you had strong vignetting that focused my attention on a particular room and called attention to wonder about its history, that would improve the story. The repetition is too much, I think.
Balconies by Dennis Wirt, 20 points.
Pete said, fresh view of a familiar subject, soft texture but sharp focus. I would have darkened the left side of the picture to draw the eye faster to the young girl's face.
Bride by Leslie Nutt, 21 points.
There are some technical difficulties with this shot, Stewart says. The focus is soft and the crop is a bit too tight, but I'll suggest this was like a spontaneous grab shot that presented itself in the spur of the moment. That shot captured the fun and joy of one instant frozen in time. Because of that, we can forego perfection. It's better to have a technically flawed image of interest and emotion than a perfectly executed photograph that is boring and does not engage.
Bright Eyes by Karen Kritzer, 19 points.
Keith says, I feel the chill in the air and see my path ahead, walking through the woods in the sunlight. Consider cropping it a bit on both sides to reduce the amount of out-of-focus branches, and or consider using Photoshop tools to get rid of some stray branches in the lower corners. The usual thought is the lines like those can lead the viewer's eyes off the image. Maybe there is a little more on the left than there needs to be.
Bun Lake by Michael DeLauro, 21 points.
I always want this type of image to have a base, said Pete, for the composition to stand on, and it just seems to hang in space. Otherwise, the work is well done.
Cleveland Arcade by Melanie Plummer, 22 points.
Stewart says this is a good attempt at an iconic Cleveland city's landscape, but the processing is a bit too harsh. I'd like to see more midtone and gray shadow detail. The window detail of the terminal tower and adjacent structures is pleasing, but some of the other highlights are blown with no pixel detail. It's an understandable challenge to bring off something like this, and the ambient light as well as time of day are key factors in a successful shot.
This is Cleveland at Night by David Tripp, 18 points.
He says, certainly this is a powerful image. It uses the whole grayscale so well. Excellent. Normally I'd ask if the stock at the bottom leads the viewer's eye off the page, but it really makes sense to be there. Works well.
Cosmos in Black and White by March Brady, 23 points, third place.
Pete said, the person walking across the street makes this a great image. That one thing tells you the size. Quality of the print is a good selling point.
Desolation Road by Graham Stead, 23 points, third place.
This is a pretty cool representation of Dr. Doom and is beautifully suited for black and white, Stewart says, both thematically and aesthetically. What helps make it so is the terrific lighting. It imparts great modeling and makes it look like he's coming right out of the frame. I don't feel the tonal range from black up to white highlight could be more perfect, and the separation from the background is well done. The firm vertical line of the well is also a nice bonus element that contrasts with the organic shape of Doom's face. Looking to the left as he is doing it pulls the viewer into the center of attention, and there's an implied notion that the action is getting ready to start. Very well done.
Dr. Doom by Mike Kopkis, 23 points, third place.
He says, all the interesting shadows and lines and geometry makes this very interesting shot. You might consider dropping off the top 25% and forcing the viewer to focus on the path down the bridge. The upper sky part is not as interesting and complex. The complexity and interactions and shadows of the bottom 75% are much more interesting.
This is called Endless by Mike Murray, 21 points.
I really enjoy this type of image, Pete says. It's a wonderful eye connection for composition. I would like to see this in color. Being a photojournalist by trade, I would love to see some form of life, but it is not needed to carry this image.
Form by James Sidney, 20 points.
Stewart says this is a good choice for black and white since baseballs don't have a lot of color, and this is an attempt at a different visual interpretation. Exposure is perfect with interesting illumination coming from the right and some sharp details featured. It almost looks planetary. However, I feel just wanting for more, like something is missing that would make this more engaging. It is a good thought concept though, and I appreciate that people are always trying to come up with new approaches.
Game Ball by Mike Kopkis, 21 points.
Case says, wow, beautiful and powerful. Outstanding use of the entire grayscale. I fuss about lines leading the viewer's eye off the image. What do you think of slightly vignetting the bottom of the stocks so that they blend more into the background black just at the bottom of the print?
This one is called Glowing Dahlias by James Sidney, 25 points, first place.
Very intense moment, Pete says. I only wish the picture had a little more depth of focus or just a little bit more light in the eyes. Good impact.
Gorilla 5066BW by Ron Wilson, 23 points, third place.
This is nice timing on an emotional moment and was captured with perfect exposure and sharpness, Stewart says. The composition was a good choice for black and white. From a narrative standpoint, the shot makes you stop and wonder about the child who is staring beyond the adult. Is the person bored, a casual friend, or is there something else going on here? Where the photo lacks energy and excitement, it does manage to create a bit of mystery that engages with the audience.
Hug from a Princess by Karen Kritzer, 20 points.
Keith commented, I stared right back. The face is great. The out of focus grass and background would be less distracting if it was darker. Darker vignette. The animal at the right side is distracting and sort of messes up the potentially simple image.
I Have All Day by Mike Murray, 17 points.
Pete says, I like this image, but only wish the photographer was able to get more of the second animal. Overall, a good print and a good composition.
In Love by Joanne Damian, 21 points.
Stewart says the dramatic clouds and angle of the subject, it looks like we are being greeted by a visitor from the past. With the sun off to the right, some good shadow detail on the left side was nicely preserved, which can often be challenging in a situation like this. Black and white was a good choice for this, which provides an opportunity to accent the gritty age and decay of the car. Color would have added very little. The sharpness on the trolley is just right, but a little bit of blur could have been applied to the foliage. This would have held it back from merging into the more interesting detail of the train. Still, this was nicely done.
Lost in Time by Dennis Wirt, 21 points.
According to Keith, the detailed design and construction is so amazing. I think this would have been better if more was shown, or maybe less. The challenge is keeping the viewer's eye on the image and not wandering off the page. There are several places where I want to see the complete structure and I can't. The challenge is building probably just keeps going on and on. It is difficult to show just part of it. What about vignetting the print all the way around? Very dark edges.
Mom's Hometown Cathedral by James McDonald, 18 points.
Great eye, Pete says. Very good angle. I would like the sky to be a little darker at the top to keep the viewer's eye trapped in the circle composition.
Morning in Cascade Valley by Vicki Wirt, 22 points.
Stewart says this does have some interest as it evokes memories and feelings of times past when there were crowded theaters and I used to go to the Saturday afternoon movies. So there is an emotional connection. The shallow depth of field works and the illumination is just right, implying something is on the screen. The shot is okay, but I'm wanting a little bit more, perhaps something that adds to the narrative.
Mr. and Mrs. Herman Miller by Leslie Nutt, 19 points.
He states, this is a really cool shot. Excellent use of all the grayscale without losing detail. The cropping is perfect. I have no suggestions.
Musical Architecture by Graham Steed, 23 points, third place.
Pete says, good idea, but the image leaves too many questions about what is happening. Could be printed with a higher contrast to make it less muddy.
Neil 2 by Neil Linebaugh, 19 points.
Stewart says, this is like one of those scenes that makes you jump back from the TV screen. The sharp processing and illumination on the face and teeth really pull it off. Now, I don't want to sit here alone, judging in the dark. I like the concept and framing, and everything is just fine with the right side of the image. The left is a little distracting, though, with the blown out pixels on the hand and tombstone. That diminished the effectiveness a little. Perhaps an exposure adjustment layer could have fixed it. But all in all, the image is very effective. Now I have to send my shorts to the laundry.
Night Scare by Dan Lester, 19 points.
He says, the way the subject is separated from the background is excellent. Focus and brightness. I feel like the person is very present. Good street photography.
NOLA Photographer, Mickey Valencia by Gary Marich, 18 points.
I love this image and composition is on spot, said Pete. The story it tells is complete. Would love to see this printed in a blue-black tone.
NOLA Trumpet Player by, again, Gary Marich. This time, 24 points, second place.
The general concept of the lighting here works well, Stewart says, and I'd like the crop with the woman coming in from the left. It is a different sort of portrait, with the subject emerging from the deep dark. I like the thought process. I do feel the contrast is a bit too harsh, though. This can work in a particular context, but I feel a softer lighting effect would reveal more interesting grayscale tones that could enhance modeling and depth. There is nothing wrong with this, it's just how I view it through the glasses of my own personal taste.
Oh, the stories I could tell. By Rich Foley, 23 points, third place.
Keith says, this is a great shot, isn't it? Using all the grayscale perfectly. My only question is this. Painting is an additive art. Start with a blank canvas and add until the story image is complete. Photography is a subtractive art. Take away until you are left with the story. If you accept that, would you crop more off the right side? Maybe a little more off the left. The bird looking left at something is the story I'm saying.
Peering into the Swamp by Brian O'Riordan, 25 points, first place.
Pete says, what wonderful timing, wonderful print quality also. And she has great composition. I know how difficult this was to get.
Powerful Jump by Susan Bestel, 25 points, again first place.
Stewart says, because of the light background, for a moment I thought the dancer was soaring among the clouds. That is an enjoyable illusion. The well-timed floating scarves nicely add to the area effect, and the mottled lighting gives a nice sense of dimensionality. Everything is tack sharp, well exposed, and a pleasure to view. This is a beautiful photo that looks great in black and white.
This is called Premier Danseur by Jackie Sayesky, 24 points, second place.
Keith says, I certainly feel some motion when I look at this. 4-lane highway going up and away. Interesting design. It is sort of disorienting and might, in fact, make people uncomfortable. My eyes just keep going up and off the image in the left-leaning curve.
Racing to the Sky by Debbie Litsky, 19 points.
Pete says, really nice idea, but the background is just a bit distracting and could use a little more space around the central image.
Ready to Sew by Bonnie Luxo, 20 points.
Stewart said, this really made me stop, look, and wonder. What the heck was I looking at? Right away, that makes it a successful image because it has grabbed the viewer's attention. I couldn't tell if it was fish, mermaid, but then finally a bird as I recognized wings. Action, form, and stop motion is key here, so black and white was an excellent choice. Exposure is perfect. Focus has nailed the subject. The shallow depth of field channels the point of view. Timing is everything, and this shot is a good example of that old saying.
Seagull Fishing by Bob Kowaleski, 21 points.
Keith says, it is a very imposing building with real character. Not like all the aluminum, glass, concrete things I see every day here in Dallas. Good use of the whole range of black and white scale. The building looks strong and safe, but the sky looks troubled and stormy. That introduces some tension for me, and I'm not sure if that is intentional.
Severance Hall by Joseph Migo, 20 points.
Good detail in the trees, but it needs detail in the river water also, said Pete. The composition needs a base in the foreground to hold up the image, to give the viewer a place to start. With a base, the sky could be a little darker to set the mist up to hold the viewer's eye down.
Skagway by Dave Saborik, 23 points, third place.
Stewart says this is a pleasing black and white composition in which the eye is led from foreground to mid-range and then to the background. There is a comfortable flow. It appears the lighting was somewhat flat, which made it possible to enjoy a good tonal range of nice grays. Everything seems to be equally sharp. That's okay, but if the background is a bit softer, it impacts a nicer sense of depth. It's a beautiful photo and nicely processed.
Spirit Island, Alberta by Belinda Prinz, 23 points, third place.
He states, I lived a long time in central Illinois and enjoyed the rural structures like this. There is so much interesting history. I wonder if the trellis thing on the right, oh, that interesting details on the front of the building more prominently. Sepia is fitting.
Stone Garden Repair Shop by Chris Bosworth, 21 points.
Pete says, great image, good exposure and lighting. Dream-like image capturing the dancer's feeling. Very well done.
This one is Strong Form by Jackie Sayeski, 24 points, second place.
Stewart says, I love the mystery of this shot as well as the illusion. Is there a person snoozing on the couch, or is it just the way the cushions and sheets are skillfully arranged? Either way, it draws a viewer in, providing the audience with an engaging narrative. The massive amount of dark negative space does a good job of focusing attention, and the main highlight diffuses out into some pleasing tonal gradations. A distraction, though, is the window at right, and I feel a square crop of the main image would have strengthened everything overall. Whether the illusion of a sleeping person was intended or not, we are presented with a fascinating composition. Maybe stick around and study it.
Sundown by Joseph Aber, 22 points.
Keith says, this is powerful and brought back images to me from the California coastline. Good use of the entire grayscale. The black sky at the top is ominous and suggests a storm is coming. The amount of black sky makes the image sort of top heavy and introduces tension, but that is what happens to real world weather.
This is called Tree on the Hill by Rich Foley, 23 points, third place.
Great image, Pete says. Very good eye and great quality print. Not many things can make this a better image. I love these quality pictures. The photojournalist in me would love to see a single life form somewhere.
Vestrahorn Iceland by Bob Kowaleski, 25 points, again, another first place.
The overcast day was perfect for this nicely processed black and white, Stewart says. Solid processing and sharp focus on the main elements make this a successful example of street photography. There's a nice contrasting balance between the strong verticals on the right and the harbor on the left, both of which capture the walker in the middle of an implied diagonal. Initially, I was bothered by the large blurred foreground. However, the more I considered it, I realized it was a valid supporting element that helped emphasize the walker. This was a good catch.
Walking the Pier by Eric Wethington, 21 points.
Keith says, I love the handmade and well-used articles. You can imagine the people who were there. Table in upper left is distracting. Should it be either out or in this shot maybe with a can of beer or a dirty ashtray? You can picture that This is an old cabin in the woods.
Who Wants to Play Checkers by Bonnie Luxo, 21 points.
Pete says, good day made better by the person in the image telling the story of the winds and the clouds. Great composition and perfect timing.
Windy Day at the Pier by Vicky Wirt, 21 points.
The timing of the shot was good, Stewart says, and the subject is helping by looking into the frame. The diagonal branches also provide a nice framing element. Exposure and focus are pretty good. The issue, though, is the tonal gradation is fairly uniform across the frame. This causes the hawk to partially blend into the background. The challenge, then, is to provide more separation from the background, and this can be done in post. By very carefully creating an adjustment layer, a modest amount of Gaussian blur can be applied to the leaves that are closest to the bird and branch. That additional blur will help visually push the raptor forward to the viewer. As a final step, a little more sharpening can be applied to the bird for some better definition. All in all, this was a good start, and it just needed a little help in post.
Backyard Hawk by Dan Lester, 18 points.
Case says, I feel like I am there, having walked through the woods, tangled woods, and then arriving at the tranquil lake. This is a great shot. Uses the complete grayscale perfectly.
Beulah Beach by Michael DeLauro, 23 points, third place.
I like this picture, but wish the brew dog sign was gone, said Pete. My eye seems to travel to that point and takes away the overall great picture.
Cleveland Sign in the Flats by David Tripp, 18 points.
Stewart says, I love the grays, highlighted background, and beautiful shadows of this lovely still life. The framing is just perfect, and the slanting light provides a pleasing diagonal and causes the viewer's eyes to travel from left to right. This is an effective element. It appears a creative filter is applied to the image. Normally, I'm not a big fan of effects that try to make photos look like paintings, but here it works. I'd still be curious, though, to see what the original looks like.
Dead Flowers by Brian O'Riordan, 22 points.
Case says, my reaction when first seeing it was, wow, very dramatic. I'm always concerned about images that disappear into and outside the edges. They drag the viewer's eye away from the image. I wish the print included the four spires. There is some messy processing in the upper right sky.
I believe it's Duomo Roof by Joe DiStefano, 24 points, second place.
Pete says, great study and light control has made me want more. Pull back and give me more of the subject. A little thing, but the hair at the top leading out of the frame.
Jawline by Fran Marino, 23 points, third place.
Stewart says, I've seen a lot of airshow photos, and while technically well executed, they all tend to resemble each other. This one is quite different. It is a real standout and works very well in black and white. What impresses me is the unique capture angles it moves into the frame and how the aircraft is placed right over the highlighted portion of the sky. This really pushes it toward the audience and is like the jet was shot in its own high-altitude studio. It is sharp, well exposed, and processed in a way that subtly reviews the vapor or shock cone as well as the hint of jet flame. I can't think of any way to improve this very engaging image. Well done.
Jet in the Clouds by Richard Vader, 20 points.
Keith says, I would have a hard time getting up from that pose. Me too. Exposure and grayscale utilization certainly are good. Is there tension from the unusual position? Is the open mouth distracting?
Modern Dance by Susan Vestal, 19 points.
Pete says, good image, but I would like to see more space around the central image. Good exposure and good print quality.
Old Barn in Medina County, by Jen Cockrell, 18 points.
Stewart says this is a wonderful image that in some ways reminds me of either a fashion shot or something that could be found in a travel magazine. The circular framing is exquisite. Your eye is pulled to the blinding sun, which then cascades down through the visual oops into the close foreground. This provides a dimensional sense of motion and energy through the length of the net. As we further study the picture, we find such interesting details as the captured fish, the partial highlights on net elements, and the slightly open hand of the fisherman. I'm sure this beautifully exposed and processed shot is wonderful in color, but black and white has enabled us to examine and better appreciate all the structural elements of the complete photo as a whole. It is terrific.
Old Fashioned Fishin' by Debbie Litsky, 24 points, second place.
He says, I feel like they were headed my way quickly. I was not certain what kind of critters they are. I wonder if the features need to be more defined in the silhouette for this to work. I think so.
On to Greener Pastures by James McDonnell, 19 points.
Pete said, great image and really good exposure control. Wonderful print quality, good compositions. The only thing that would make it better would be a bug. I like this image.
Orange Jewelweed, BW, by Joseph Miko, 24 points, second place.
Stewart says raw emotion and energy have been captured here with terrific stage lighting. The timing was right on, and all the key elements are in sharp focus. One of the difficulties of concert lighting is that pixels can be blown into bright areas, but that's not the case here. Good grayscale tonality has been preserved, and it looks like the performer is coming right out of the screen. Well done.
This is Sam Bush at the North Carolina Folk Festival 2022 by Melanie Plummer, 25 points, first place.
He says, time is passing by these now closed shops, and he is zooming by too. His motion is part of the story. I wish there was more of him visible at the bottom.
Sunday Morning, West 25th. Joseph Aber, 19 points.
Good picture and composition, Pete said. I would give the image a little more base to stand on, and maybe a person sitting on a bench to give the image light.
Terminal, BW, by Ronald Wilson, 22 points.
Stewart says there's a wonderful implied narrative here, and it makes the viewer want to stick around and contemplate this somewhat mysterious image. Are they lovers, brother and sister, or is this some other type of encounter? The subtle emotional impact is key to engaging the viewer. Shooting the water droplets in razor-sharp relief with a shallow depth of field is very effective in adding to the veil of mystery here. It covers, slightly obscures, but does not distract our subjects. The woman's highlighted face is the main focal point, and this is nicely framed by the angle of the man's arm. That gentle curve leads the viewer's eyes to the more shadowed and secondary elements of the photograph. Overall, the thought process and the execution of this picture was very well considered.
The Soft Touch by Bill Keaton, 24 points, second place.
He says, I laughed, and then I looked more carefully at his face. Love it. The use of the mid grayscale contrasted with the stark white ball is so effective. Great shot.
The Wind-Up by Belinda Prinz, 25 points, first place.
I think that finishes out our black and white competition. Bill, did you have any more on the list there?
Not the black.
Okay, in black and white. Why don't we take a few minutes break and before we go on to the pictorial. So take a few minutes break.
It's always funny when they.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever seen it. You know, a bunch of them like that. No. Yes, about five. It's a start.
Okay.
Oh, no, you're the man. Oh, you're the man. Oh, that's right.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
Mine does
okay,
not.
yeah.
And I was back.
So I will.
We started talking, and it's like, oh, I had one done too. And it's kind of, well, I had mine done.
The awakening, these are like, you know, why they're talking. You started understanding.
I had both shoulders.
They're now, they're both torn.
That's where we
Go to get
Every one of the ones that's still there.
way up there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's. I did quick, 22.
Because I got no COVID. Third week after before. Physical therapy at that time.
Is because he marked it, so you'll know to stop reading it.
Comments of the first one.
Yeah, awakening,
Yeah, he's done his whole
23, no comment.
I'll go ahead and do your second
Awakening, and there's that going on. Should be.
Okay, so I'll just go slowly through them. And if I need any more, when I get to one, I'm gonna read.
Yeah, just leave all the.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in my second surgery, the same knee, the first one is and he said,
Well, you know,
the surgeon,
I said,
the third one, he didn't go to the so he had to go to the specialist. His second knee is fixing. That's his specialty.
What I never realized how serious it is and how the body is built. My doctor warned me, he said, statistically, 2% of knee
That's what we're going to go over. That is what I'm going to bring. And then you now, because there's a calibration skill.
I think I was pretty
Calibrate
strong.
And there's like a million kind of ifs and
When I go to the
buts.
dentist,
How am I gonna be?
tons of
And it's
pills.
always right.
When I go to the dentist,
Yeah,
I
but
have
you're right, but it's also-
even for cleaning. He says, you get a problem, it depends on your knee, if you get an infection, it's a sudden fight.
Your pictures are all doing dark. So that's with everything.
Yeah, my buddy, he had some kind of allergic reaction when the knee was in. And so they had to walk and everything, and they found some other material that they could use, and so he had to go back to it. He had a reaction to the metal.
Prints are simple. Just more details. You missed it.
I gotta show you a picture of my surgeon.
Cleveland side?
Yeah.
That's
That's the image, that's there. Here's what it is. I'm just judging this, I was judging 2 hours last. And I was second guessing myself, so pretty well, it's hard, but I mean, that was.
Okay, we'll get ready to get back underway with the pictorial section. Let me just bring these up. Okay, and the first set of pictorial images will not be commented on. So we'll just go through these slowly here.
Okay, this is A Touch of Yellow by Bill Keaton. 2 points. Coming in for Fuel by Debbie Liskey. 25 points, second place. Dead or Alive by Dan Lester. 19 points. Early Morning on the Oregon Coast by Fran Marino. 19 points. Everett Road by Rick Mills. 20 points. Francois Langour Infant by Belinda Prinz. 23 points. Honorable mention. Glacier Bay by Joanne Damian. 18 points. Grand Canyon Early Morning South Rim by Melanie Plummer, 21 points. Hilton Head by Dave Tripp, 20 points. Medieval Combatant by Richard Ader, 25 points, second place. Milkweed by Joseph Miko, 23 points, honorable mention. This is Pete's Cattle by James McDonald, 18 points. River Birch by Michael DeLauro, 22 points. Rock and Roll from Bridge by Rick Mills, 20 points. Skyline by Denise Meekins, 20 points. Storm King by Terry Martin. This one got 26 points. First place. Sunset at Chippewa Lake by Jen Cockrell, 16 points. Swan Lake by Susan Bestel, 24 points. Third place. Teton T-Storm by Terry Martin. Again, missed it by 1 point. 26 points, first place. The Docks of Tromsø, Norway by Eric Wethington. 23 points, honorable mention. Tremblant by Joe DiStefano, 17 points. West Virginia Morning by Marge Brady, 21 points. The next slide will start with the comments.
Pete said, "What more can be said? This image has it all. Very good composition, great print quality, a small touch of color in the leaf, leaving you with more questions. I would hang this picture in my home."
Awakening by Neil Linebaugh, 22 points.
Stewart says this is a height of minimalism, figuratively and literally. A good example of what you can do with a plain boring sky. Pretend you are in the studio using a white backdrop. There is not a tremendous amount of impact here, but the framing and composition is pleasant. The detail on the bird is excellent and actually seems mildly interested in what the photographer is doing. And despite of the lack of anything going on here, there is value in this picture. I see it being included in a series of several other photos. Considered in a larger grouping, this image with its overwhelmingly bright negative space could be a solid design element in an overall arrangement of other photographs. That could be part of a gallery's exhibition, on-screen layout, or even a book feature. It's all in the way you consider the final goal.
Bird on a Branch by Leslie Nutt, 20 points.
He says, first, which way is up? It takes time to make sense, and then I'm still not sure. So there is a lot of tension, like an unsolved puzzle, which teases the viewer. It is fun, but not the best picture to look at if you are having an issue with vertigo. Just joking.
Blue Architecture by Graham Stead, 21 points.
Pull back and give me more space, said Pete. Picture needed more base. Composition is too busy, not letting the eye know where to look.
Canal Street by Dennis Wirt, honorable mention, 23 points.
Stewart says, I call this a classic postcard type of shot, but I don't mean that in a critical way. It's nicely rendered with just enough ambient light to illuminate the skyline and docks, although I suspect HDR was used for the latter. Color puts the rock hall in a very pleasing light, and other peripheral spots help support it nicely. The image does seem to be very slightly tilted to the right, but that may just be an optical illusion from the main subject.
Cleveland Inner Harbor by Chris Bosworth, 24 points, third place.
Case says, perfect moment caught on camera. What could be done to make this less monochromatic and less similar to brightness contrast?
Dine at Kendall Lake by Mike Murray, 22 points.
Pete said, this would make a good stamp. It's a great image. Simple composition, but clean. I like this picture and see many places this picture could be placed.
Falsated Duck by Dave Saborik. Another one that just missed by 1 point. 26 points, first place.
Cute is the first thing that comes to mind when viewing this image, Stewart says, so there is an emotional connection. It almost looks like it is winking. Cropping is pleasant, exposure is well balanced, and the right elements are sharp. The angle coming from the right seems to be almost 3/4, and that adds some interest to the photograph.
Foxy by Vicky Wirt, 23 points, honorable mention.
Keith says, I wish I was there. This does a great job of capturing all of it, including the more distant parts, and mist, progressively more misty.
Gates of Lodor, Gary Marich, 20 points.
Is this the right one, the morning fog? Okay. Pete said, this picture needs only a little more contrast to make it pop off the page. Breaking the rule of thirds and making it work. I wish I was there to add this image to my personal file.
Don't know if that's right.
I don't either.
I have Ghost in the Cell by Mike Hopkins. Doesn't sound like the description.
I'll read it. I got it.
Okay.
Visual questions jump out from this image, and the more I view this picture, the more I like it. Therefore, are many statements being made that my eye keeps jumping from places in this space. What a wonderful piece of art, Pete said.
Ghost in the Cell by Mike Hopkins, 23 points, honorable mention.
Stewart says, the image is stunning in its strange and compelling appearance, and that is what grabs the viewer for a deeper look. You're hooked and can't look away. We are faced with a visual contradiction as a futuristic young lady pirouettes across a time-worn landscape. She is beautiful and strangely adorned as she strikes a ballet pose. It all seems out of place, but that is what keeps you. To reinforce this, the lighting is superb. There's just the right amount of ambient landscape illumination to complement the nicely exposed woman. The shallow depth of field focuses attention on her, leaving the blurred background as a great supporting canvas. Obviously, a conceptually planned modeling or cosplay shot is wonderfully thought out and beautifully executed. My kudos for such a unique photo.
Goddess of the Desert by Jackie Sajewski, 20 points.
First thought, I want to chip some of that crystal clear ice for my drink. Exposure is perfect to capture the waves. I love the symmetry of the black sand and dark gray sky. The shine on the rocks makes them so real. Outstanding shot and print.
Icelandic Seascape by Terry Martin. And once again, 26 points, first place.
All right, now, Pete says this picture needs only a little more contrast to make it pop off the page, breaking the rule of thirds and making it work. I wish I was there to add this image to my personal file.
Morning Fog by Bob Kowaleski, 25 points, second place.
Quiet, calm, and serenity is my immediate emotional hook into this shot. There is little impact, but many images can be successful without being right in your face. This photo is pleasant with good even color and sharpness in the right places. The lighter background imparts a sense of depth that draws you down the waterway and adds dimensionality. Exposure is even throughout, and I'm left with a sense that this is a place I'd like to visit.
October Day by Karen Kritzer, 21 points.
Keith says, looks like a fun place to be. I wonder if less would be more though. Does this out of focus foreground add? Does there need to be that much sky above the building?
Old Saloon by Rich Foley, 22 points.
Pete says, I find this image hard to comment on because I do not understand the message. The print quality is spot on. The image is sharp and in focus. Beyond that, I would tell the photographer to try again.
Old Phone Booth by Bonnie Luxo, 20 points.
Beautifully rendered, Stewart says. I would expect to see this image in a fine art calendar or on the cover of a hardbound book. The scene is straightforward, but there is much to absorb and explore. The eye can take a wonderful narrative trip from the foreground to corn stalks, to the detailed barns and silo, all the way out to the softer horizon. Everything is fascinating. That visual difference between a strong, darker foreground and hazier distance creates a nice sense of atmospheric perspective. The flat 2D JPEG file suddenly becomes a three-dimensional world with depth. From a technical standpoint, the exposure is perfect, there are no blown pixels in the highlights, and it appears like sharpening was only applied where needed. This is a wonderful image.
This is P.A. Barn by John Downey, 21 points.
Keith says, first thought is my favorite lighthouse in Michigan. We don't have them in Downs. This does a wonderful job of communicating the typical barren scene surrounding water, action, threat you see around lighthouses, including the threatening sky. Well done.
Peggy's Cove by Joanne Damian, 24 points, third place.
Pete said, very skilled work. Tripods are not used by many photographers, but where they're used well, great images are achieved.
Pillar of Northern Lights by Eric Wethington, 19 points.
Stewart says, what do they say about only a mother could love this? The image has a lot of impact when it appears on screen, looking almost alien. Processed for heavy contrast, you can feel the skin contours and sharp beak. The black vignette in the upper left provides a nice diagonal counterpoint to the dark body below. That piercing eye sizes up the viewer's possible friend or future meal. This is well shot in a clinical sort of way with correct exposure and focus, but it appears to be cut out from the background in a way that distracts a little. Still, one won't forget this portrait.
which is a portrait of Andean condor by Marsh Brady, 24 points, third place.
Case says, is this a pinhole camera? Would it be better if there was less unfocused image? Maybe a square with the in focus area in the center, darker edges?
Red Berries in Woods by Jane Sidney, 17 points.
Pete said, being in the right place at that perfect moment and knowing how to compose is this photographer's skill level. Job well done.
Rock and Roll by Rick Mills, 19 points. That concludes our entries for tonight's competition.
And that's it then. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next week.
Every week.